And participants at the just concluded 2020 budget seminar hosted by the Securities and Exchange Commission have re-emphasized the need for the government to tilt more towards the private sector in order to achieve sustainable growth. With the theme, leveraging the 2020 budget and Finance Act for growth of the Nigerian capital market, the panelists spoke on opportunities and incentives that will support growth and wealth creation. Let's take a listen.
What we need to do, we take doing the right things consistently for the next 10 years plus, and we'll begin to see the difference. It will be almost impossible to see any radical change in 1 year. So what we're looking out for is those enablers that builds on the progress we've made and takes us closer to our desire for sustainable growth. We know why government has no choice but to run deficit, because revenue is weak. And we know that there's a minimum level of expenditure government must incur, and they must take tough decisions to restructure the overall economy and the way we do things. What we are looking for is for government to show that level of urgency and ensure that we do the right things consistently, so that progressively we're beginning to see the change that we deserve. There's no short-term fix, there's no silver bullet, and Prof's commentary only does re-emphasizes that point. Now, moving on, I would like to push the ball a bit to the private sector, and that's Jai. He's the president of the NESG, and the NESG is the major private sector policy engagement arm. They recently published an outlook for the 2020, and they titled it Nigeria in the next decade, sustaining growth and job creation. So it probably can shed more light and answer some of the questions that Prof raised. So, Mr. Jayola, looking at the current fiscal stance we can see from the two bills, what do you think we should be doing to activate this sustainable growth that will lead to poverty reduction? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, moderator. And let me again land very safe. I agree with Prof 100%. In doing our 10 years forward, we looked at 10 years before now. And the fact that we had our revenue, our expenditure has been about 58 trillion. And we've done 20 trillion deficit. So you see our debt stock rising from where it was in 2011 to 2020. I mean, 2019 is about 26 trillion. That's how we've built that. Painfully, only 10.5 trillion had gone into capital. And if you look for value for money and realize the fact that though you can budget 10 trillion, but the actual value for money is just about 5. So realize only about 58 trillion was spent, only 5 went to that. And that gets to tell you that government in itself is not in a position to create jobs and to do that. What needs to happen? Now, from the report we did, and I'm not going to go to what happened 2019, 2020, it was evident that only 3 sectors had above 20% growth. About 33 sectors of the economy shrunk. I mean, they did only 2%, and the rest shrunk. And what then we then tried to do was to look at what do you need to do? 2 things are clear. You will need to work on our business environment. Now, we commend what government is doing around PBEC, but they're doing the low-hanging fruit. They're not dealing with those issues. And you understand it better. Worldwide, there are about 25% of available investment that is attracting negative yields. And if people are doing negative yields on those things, and what can we do to attract them and bring them to Nigeria? If you look at our domestic, our total funding, you realize that what we are attracting is a portfolio investment, and only about $666 million was what we attracted last year. Why would they not come? 2 reasons. When you take top decision about policies, people don't see sanctity of contract, there are reversals, right? Policy somersault, one breath you say, you don't do. the tone and the body language of government sometimes, whilst you say you want to attract private sector, what is your attitude and view about the private sector and market itself? So today, there are three key areas where the nation is bleeding: electricity, power, and FX, because we're not doing the right prices. Those areas alone, if you allow market prices to happen, we will cover all the gaps we're looking for. All the money we borrow every year, we don't need to borrow it. So that's with regards that you need to work more about policies. And if you do these policies appropriately and you condition it very, very rightly, what you will find out is that those capital will come. We need to do a lot of domestic resource mobilization too, which we're not doing. There are capital in this country, but who will put his money when you don't even see the way out? I mean, you see, you just gave me 4 minutes, and maybe later I'll talk. Look at the power sector itself. There are issues. Now, one of the things we did in our report was to look at, okay, so Nigeria, unfortunately, have found itself to be the poverty capital of the world, because we have about 100 people below. Now, this was a thing that grew in the last 10 years. Now, so we did a simulation of the phrase, how do you move people out of poverty, and try to look at the relationship between jobs and employment, because that's the only linkage we found. Unfortunately, the current job creation have an elasticity relationship of about 0.66. So in other words, for every 100 jobs you created, you only lifted 65% out of poverty. That talks about the quality of jobs that we're creating. Again, from the paper that came from MBSD, they did speak about Nigerian labor, and realized that about 77 million people, that's about 2017, 77 million people were employed. And of these, 48% of them are in the agri sector. But you all know the competition of agri to the economy, and they're poor. So, and I saw Dr. Lowry talking about agri sector. 90% of what we have in agri sector is crops. So nobody's doing value addition. So one of the things that is important is take those sectors, and if government take the right decisions in terms of how do you enable the environment, how do you free capital, private capital, we then begin to see us add value to our agri. And there's a lot that can be done. And what that does with our report is that if you take those tough decisions, it is possible when you concentrate on 6 sectors to actually create additional jobs and lift about 50 million people out of poverty in 5 years. It's not something that can be done overnight. It's something that must be done consistently. But people must see seriousness. They must see that we are committed, we are consistent, and they must see that it doesn't matter which government comes in power, it is what Nigeria needs to do. But obviously, I look at capital markets, each time we look at 1 year, I'm not moved by what happened 1 year. And unfortunately, in finance, you talk about technical analysis, you talk about fundamental analysis, but more often than not, we all look at the technical rather than look at fundamental. The fundamentals are not right. And we need to begin to look beyond 1 year and see what do we need to do in the long term as a nation, which areas do we need to pay attention to, what does government need to do, and where does government need to get out of the way. There's capital outside and local, but those policies and decisions need to be taken. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we are making progress from what Mr. Jayola has said. It just re-emphasizes that we need to do the right things now and do them on a sustainable basis. Just to take the narrative a bit forward, Taiwo, Mr. Oyedele, now, we better understand the framework under which the budget is being implemented. We better understand what we must do to achieve sustainable growth and to lift Nigerians out of poverty. Now, what has been done different this year is that apart from just coming out with the appropriation bill, government has gone ahead to come up with complementary fiscal incentives under the finance bill to make it easier to achieve its objectives. And in as much as we recognize that we still have a long way to go, clearly the finance bill is a step in the right direction because we've seen a number of incentives that can make a difference, both in the short, medium, and long term. So with that background, Taiwo, can you share your thoughts with us on the key opportunities and incentives that can support growth and wealth creation in general, and the specific opportunities for the Nigerian capital market?
Thank you very much. I'm going to address this, I know I have just a few minutes, from three perspectives. One is to share my thoughts on the budgeting process itself, then the finance act, and what I call what else do we need to do. In terms of the budgeting, I don't know whether as a country we truly understand what it means to have a budget. And I say that because if you look back, say the past 5 years, the budget variances have been so significant that you can almost conclude that the budget was unnecessary in the first place. So in 2019, the year that just ended, based on the CBN report that just came out, FG budgeted revenue of 7 trillion and made 4.8 trillion. We budgeted to spend 8.9 trillion, we spent 9.4 trillion. We budgeted a deficit of 1.92 trillion, we ended up with 4.6 trillion. So these variances are so huge, it's almost unbelievable. It's worse at the state level. All the states budgeted to spend 9 trillion, they generated 3.5 trillion. So the gap is almost twice as big as the variance. So sometimes this then goes into the heart of, should we take government seriously based on what they have said in the budget? I have my doubts. But having said that, I'll move on to my second point around the Finance Act. I do agree with you. I think that it's a positive development. It's like first of its kind in a generation. The last time we had anything that looks anywhere close to this was 1999, during the military era. But even in terms of scale, not anywhere close to the Finance Act, which has over 100 amendments to 7 different tax laws. So it's significant. So for capital markets, these are the major ones, in my view. The real estate investment company structure that we now have a regime for to make it tax transparent means that we can have more investors coming. When they do well, they list on the market, of course, they have to be listed to enjoy the benefit. And then that can increase the level of activities in the market. Regulated security lending is also a good one. I'm sure nobody was doing it before because of the bad tax regime. So now that that has been addressed, it means that we can begin to see activities in that regard. Then stamp duty exemption is also positive, as well as the restructuring that we have done to what we call Section 19 excess dividend tax on holdco structure. In my capacity as an advisor to investors, I've seen, sadly, instances where multinationals, in fact, one is as recent as about 2 months ago. This multinational currently has their headquarters for Africa in the Netherlands, where they had no activities. Because of the base erosion and profit shifting, the rest of the world are beginning to ask questions now about substance. So apparently these guys have no substance in the Netherlands. They were just there for tax avoidance. So they've decided they are moving the headquarters from the Netherlands somewhere in Africa to hold their investment in Africa. They had 4 countries, Nigeria was one of it. So they sent me an email, 10 questions. Taiwo, we'd like to talk to you about putting our headquarters for Africa in Nigeria. We got to the third question, very rational one by any investor. How do you tax holding companies in your jurisdiction? By the time we're done with the response to that question, they said, thank you very much for this call. It shall no longer be necessary to complete the remaining questions. These were 10 questions, we stop at number 3. For them, it doesn't matter what else you say. No rational person will come to your territory to pay taxes at several levels. The operating company has paid the tax, CIT, education tax, withholding tax on dividend. You give to holdco, you ask them to pay another 30%. It's so ridiculous, almost unbelievable anybody even wrote it in the first place. Good thing is that has now been taken out. So the last point I want to make is what else do we need to do? And I think this is really important. My view is that sometimes we don't situate our problems in a way that we find solutions that are impactful. For example, we spend so much energy on VAT, on capital market transactions. My view is that is so insignificant, you should not even lobby for it. Because as far as government is concerned, they'll say, we've given you one incentive. That incentive, from my analysis, and I saw the doctor was also speaking to this before.
Well, that conversation took place at the just concluded 2020 budget seminar organized by the Securities and Exchange Commission.